Hey, what's up guys? It is Rob, and I am back with another Horror Madness movie review. As I stated before, in October I'm going to be reviewing one horror movie each day. If you haven't seen my other reviews, definitely check them out, but we are on day 4. And we are going to tackle the 1996 American slasher film, Scream. Definitely one of my favorite slashers of the 90s, for sure. I remember this was released days after my birthday, on December 20th, 1996. My birthday is December 13th, so I remember it well. Really, really good film. Out of the series, it's my favorite. I like the first Scream movie and the third movie. A lot of people don't care for the third movie, but I like the third movie because it ties in with this one a lot more than the second movie does, or even the fourth movie. But this is one of a kind, I'm telling you. For like a modern slasher, it really does a good job by Dimension Films. But it was directed by Wes Craven, written by Kevin Williamson. Like I always say, rest in peace, Wes Craven. You are still the man with your movies. They are great. Not for individual sale. Oh, that's right. I got this in a box set. But anyway, this movie follows the character of Sidney Prescott, who is a high school student in the town of Woodsboro, California, who becomes the target of a mysterious killer known as Ghostface. A killer who just dresses up in a, you know, like regular Halloween costume that you could buy at the store. But the film combined, you know, comedy, mystery, violence of the slasher genre, cliches. You know, they reference other real horror films like, you know, Halloween 1978, Friday 13th. They talk about Hellraiser. You know, they reference a lot of well-known horror films. I mean, especially the whole beginning when the killer is talking to Drew Barrymore on the phone. At the time, the film was considered unique, and you know, featured characters who were aware of the real-world horror films. Because this movie is nothing but quotes from real horror films, and talking about killers from horror films. I mean, it's openly discussed in this film. But you know, this movie was actually inspired by a real-life case called, well, the case of the Gainesville Ripper. I don't really know too much about that. I think his name was Danny Rolling or something like that. He was an American serial killer who murdered like 5 students in Gainesville, Florida over 4 days. It was in late August of 1990. He like raped several of his victims and stuff like that. So it was kind of inspired by that actual case. But Kevin Williamson had a passion for horror films, especially the original Halloween, and the script to this movie was originally called Scary Movie. And I find that funny because we did get a Scary Movie, and it's a comedy. It's funny that happened. I mean, can you imagine if this was called Scary Movie and they just kept the movie the same but just titled it that way? I just don't know how it would work. But the Weinstein brothers retitled it Scream, of course. Has a great soundtrack. Marco Beltrami does the music, and it has kind of a modern take, kind of like a rock. Well, I actually have the official soundtrack with the bands and all that stuff, and it's mostly rock and you know, metal, alternative, I guess. But it's the soundtrack is good. You know, Ghostface pretty much has his own kind of theme, whereas like, you know, Jason and Michael and Freddy all have their own theme. It might not be as, you know, it might not be as popular as those, but had a budget of $14 to $15 million, and it made $173 million. Pretty successful, especially around this time, because, you know, films were, especially horror films, were going straight to DVD and video, and as well as like sequels and stuff. And this movie pretty much changed, you know, the theatrical experience around that time. You know, got more people interested in the horror genre again. It was considered to be almost like a dead following, direct-to-video titles and horror franchises of the 70s and 80s. And the sequels were drawing, you know, decreasing the financial and critical success. But the movie was accused, this movie was accused of inspiring real violent crimes and murders, which is, I think, is stupid, because it's entertainment. It's just a movie. You know, if people can't understand that, then you actually, you know, you obviously have maybe a mental issue or something that you need to get taken care of, because it's, all this is it's art, it's entertainment. That's all it is. So you have a pretty big cast in this movie. You have Neve Campbell as Sidney Prescott, who plays the main girl in this. And what's funny is, you know, they didn't even approach Neve Campbell to be the main girl at first. They wanted Drew Barrymore, because she was, you know, a hot actress at the time. You know, she had been in E.T. and some of these other horror films, and so they wanted her, but because she couldn't, she had other commitments to other films and other things, she could not be the main character, so they killed her off in the beginning. Which was a risk in itself, because she, you know, that's like killing off an actress who's big time, you know, her career's booming, and they kill the person off like right away. It's a really big risk, but it does show that you can do that. You can kill off a big name actor or actress and still go on with the story, and I think they accomplished that. She had a great scene, and she went out like a champ. I mean, I really, that's like one of my favorite scenes of the whole movie. But yeah, Neve Campbell just got off of doing The Craft, and that's another movie that I like. And she was kind of, I don't know, she was kind of skeptical about doing another horror film, because The Craft is kind of horror-ish. I mean, it does have some horror elements, but she was kind of skeptical about doing another film like that, because she just got off of doing it. But Wes Craven really wanted her. You know, at the time she was doing, I think, Party of Five, the TV show, which I didn't really watch Party of Five that much. But Wes Craven had seen it. I mean, they also went to like Alicia Witt, Brittany Murphy, and they auditioned for the role of Sidney. They even tried to get Reese Witherspoon, and Reese Witherspoon never auditioned, but they tried to get her. But Wes Craven believed that she could portray a character who was innocent, but at the same time, she would be able to handle herself during like a physical conflict. And she could. He really had a good sense of, you know, who to get for these roles. So yeah, Neve Campbell, she was very good at Sidney, playing Sidney Prescott. You have David Arquette as Dewey, and they wanted, well, at first they weren't going to get David Arquette to play Dewey either. I mean, that was kind of a toss-up. He was approached, actually, David Arquette was approached to play Billy Loomis first. But then he was asked to read the part of Dewey, and, you know, Dewey provides some comedy, kind of lighthearted, and they felt that that was better for him. But there was a lot of people who went for, who auditioned for Billy, and they were even going to get, I forgot who else they were going to get to play Billy, like Justin Whalen, Kevin Patrick, Walls was gonna do that. They were some of the final candidates that were gonna audition for Billy Loomis. But Skeet Ulrich was the best candidate for that, and rightfully so. I really enjoyed his performance as Billy Loomis. So Skeet Ulrich is Billy Loomis. You know, like I said, David Arquette as Dewey. You got Courtney Cox as Courtney Cox as Gale Weathers, and you know, the bitch, pretty much. And that's what they wanted her role to be, a reporter who doesn't stop at anything. She gets what she wants. They auditioned Brooke Shields for it. But, you know, Courtney Cox at the time was starring on the sitcom Friends, which I used to watch here and there. She was interested in playing the bitch character because on Friends she was playing like the nicer image. But that's why they, you know, she felt that she could do it. So, then you have Tatum, played by Rose McGowan, Tatum Riley, who plays Dewey's sister. And for her, Melinda Clarke and Rebecca Gayheart they auditioned for Tatum before Rose McGowan got the role. They wanted someone spunky and cynical and innocent of nature, but who could also kind of handle themselves, you know, run off at the mouth, pretty much. It's funny because Rebecca Gayheart, she landed a role in Scream 2, so I guess, you know, she wasn't completely forgotten. But Tatum plays, you know, the best friend, of course, of Sydney, and also the girlfriend of Stu, who is played by Matthew Lillard, who is basically the sidekick of Billy and Stu. You got Jamie Kennedy as Randy, who's one of my favorites. Who provides he provides a lot of comedy. He knows a lot about you know, horror films in general. Like I said, Drew Barrymore as Casey. She has one of my favorite scenes in the beginning. Joseph Whipp as Sheriff Burke. Leif Schreiber as Cotton Weary. He has a little part in this. Henry Winkler is one of my favorites. Of course, you know, he's from Happy Days, the TV show I used to watch all the time. He plays Principal Himbry. But Kevin Patrick Walls plays Steve. And like I said, Kevin Patrick Walls was going to be a candidate to play Billy, but instead they killed him off in the beginning. Then you have Lawrence Hecht as Neil Prescott, who is Sidney's father. Roger L. Jackson, who plays the voice of Ghostface, and he has a really cool voice, just like Chucky has, you know, the great voice for, Brad Dourif has the voice for Chucky, and Roger Jackson plays the voice of Ghostface. So, really, really cool stuff. A lot of great people in the cast and stuff like that. But you also have Linda Blair, who made a brief cameo as a TV reporter outside the school, which was kind of cool. And there are a lot of references to other horror films, like the janitor in the school. His name's Fred, and when you see him, he has the Freddy outfit, like the sweater, which is cool. There's just so many references to horror films. It's fantastic. And you know, like, the effects in this movie were good. I love the chase scenes for the, you know, the characters are getting chased by Ghostface, and the costume is very simple, yet there's something intimidating about it. I remember getting the costume, man. When this movie came out, I remember when the costumes, like for the next year, I remember the costumes would be at like Walmart and stuff, and they would always be sold out. Like everyone would be Ghostface for Halloween. And I wanted to get my hands on one. I finally got one. I was so happy. And I remember I was Ghostface for Halloween, and it was like the best thing ever. But there were so many Ghostface, you know, cosplayers, so to say. There were so many dressing up like Ghostface. I mean, it was a big thing. It was a very popular costume, and there was really nothing to it. But the effects were good, the music was good, the characters they say a lot of interesting things and a lot of memorable scenes, sequences, and stuff like that. But but basically, you have you know, the beginning with Casey Becker, who played by Drew Barrymore, who receives a phone call by an unknown person asking her what her favorite scary movie is. And then, you know, they start to talk a little bit, and then all of a sudden the guy on the phone starts getting mad. Like, you know, Drew Barrymore keeps hanging up, and he's like, if you hang up on me, I'll gut you like a fish. And it's like, I want to play a game. And so he starts asking questions about other horror films, and she's sitting there crying and stuff like that. And he's like, name the killer in Friday the 13th. And she's like, Jason, Jason. And he's like, I'm sorry, that's the wrong answer. No, it was Jason. And then he's like, I'm afraid not. No way. Look, it was Jason. I saw that movie 30 goddamn times. Then you should know that Jason's mother, Mrs. Voorhees, was the killer. Jason didn't show up to the sequel. I believe that was the wrong answer. Lucky for you, there's a bonus round. But for poor Steve, I'm afraid he's out. This is great, man. That whole beginning is so good. Like, I love the part where she's outside. She gets stabbed, and her parents come home, and her parents are right there at the front door, and she's trying to alert her parents that something's going on, and she can't really talk because she got stabbed kind of like in the throat. And so her parents walk in the house, and I'm like, oh my God, if only her parents would have seen. And then Ghostface pretty much stabs her to death right outside while her parents are inside. And you know, Ghostface hangs her from a tree and basically disembowels her. It's that whole beginning is crazy, and then the title shows up. It's the perfect way to start out a movie. That whole sequence was great. You know, then you get into, you know, the story of Sydney, and then her boyfriend trying to have sex with her, and then you know, she doesn't want to rush things, and you know, you meet the whole group at school and stuff like that. People start dying here and there. You know, the principal gets his, stuff happens in the bathroom at school. And, you know, and Sydney has a very troubled past with her mother getting murdered. And she just lives with her dad. But then you find out, you know, in the third act of this film, you find out who murdered her mother. And, you know, like, who the killer is, which is really cool, because throughout the whole film you're sitting there trying to figure out who the killer is. Now, and the thing is, it's not just one person, there's more people involved, but that's another twist they throw at you. But you're sitting there trying to figure out who the killer is. They make it seem obvious at one point, and then they turn around and make this seem obvious, and then they turn around and say, make you think, okay, well, it can't be him because he's in jail. It can't be this person because he's outside the front door. You know, you start to second guess. And to me, it kind of reminds me of the first Friday the 13th movie, when you're trying to figure out who the killer is. Then you find out in the third act, and it's great. I like how they did that. So it becomes kind of a cat and mouse game during the third act of the film, and really, really good. I just love the writing to this film. I thought it was very, very well done. There's a lot of cliches about, you know, like, you know, when there's a noise, they say, who's there? You might as well go outside to investigate a strange noise or something. And then, you know, Neve Campbell brings up the good point where a big-breasted girl who can't act is always running up the stairs when she should be going out the front door. You know, there's all these cliches and these things that we notice in horror movies that they do wrong. They address them in this film, and that's what I like too. So, great movie. I highly recommend this if you have not seen it. It's definitely one of my favorite horror films of the 90s, and like I said, when it comes to the Scream series, it is 100% my favorite one out of the 4 movies. So anyway, guys, when it comes to Scream, if I had to rate it, I would definitely give this movie an 8.5 out of 10. That's my ranking. So, thank you for watching this. Stay tuned for day 5, where I review another horror film. And check out my other videos. This is Rob signing off. See you next one.